Hey, so hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope we are all doing very well. Apologies for what happened on, if you were on the Zoom link the other time, that Zoom link was actually spammed, and it's such a very sad thing to happen. So I have to very quickly improvise and come to do a YouTube live for this session. Please let me know in the chat section if you can hear me clearly. Okay, excellent. All right, so we're here basically because I want to run through some modeling challenges that a couple of people have faced while trying to do the Foresight BI, Power BI developer internship. So that internship is supposed to be like something that you use to do your Power BI practice, and at the end of the day, you will have like a project portfolio for yourself. So it's basically like a beginner level kind of skill level that we are testing in that internship. But you know, there is something about the data sets that is probably most people are not familiar with that kind of data set because it contains target information. Now, because it has target information, a lot of people struggled with modeling it correctly. So I feel there's going to be a need for us to do this live session where I'll just walk through, you know, how to model the data set correctly. And then during the last minute, I also had a change of mind where I thought about actually adding more to, you know, the live session just to discuss what target data typically looks like, so that we'll have a better understanding of, you know, how to handle such things in case you have your data coming in a different dimension, or the data comes, you know, a little bit differently in terms of structure than what we have on the internship. Now, just for the sake of emphasis, I think if you go to, okay, so if you go to the Foresight BI page, training.foresightbi.com.ng, if you go to training.foresightbi.com.ng, and when you scroll down a little bit to where we have the courses, you are going to see the internship. So just in case you are watching this and you are not part of that internship yet, you can simply go to sign up for the internship right there. It's going to help you test your Power BI skills. It's also going to avail you the opportunity to have something on your profile, on your CV that you can add in terms of having worked with Power BI semi-real life projects, so to say. And also to mention that, you know, at the end of the program, once you have all your assignments approved and you have your project approved, basically, you will also have like a certificate of completion for that as well, right? So the data set that we'll be using is going to come from there. And at the end of this session, I will also upload like a link for you to be able to see where to download the demo data that I will be using in this session as well. All right. Okay. So first thing I would like to discuss is to understand targets generally. So whenever you're working with any data set that has a target, the most important thing for you to know with that data is the fact that every target is set for somebody or for an entity or for a specific period in time. That is to say that when the business decides to have targets inculcated in their performance reviews, that target is set or is given to somebody, right? So now, apart from the fact that the target will be given to somebody, it also is going to be given in such a way that the person should be able to either sell their products or their services, right? So the most important thing about target data sets is you want to find out what is the granularity of this target data. So by granularity, it simply means that this data, what does it speak to, or what are the dimensions that you have for the target data set, right? So for an organization, for example, let's say that we are running like a sales, maybe pharmaceutical sales, just in the case of this, our internship data set, for example. Then we have targets that have been given to sales representatives. So sales reps basically have targets. So sales reps. They are the entities that, are supposed to work with the targets. And, that target for the sales rep will also provide them with some information, or the data is going to have some information as to how that target is meant to be achieved. Now, even though the target does go to the sales representatives, how are they going to achieve this target? They are going to achieve the target by selling certain products. So, which simply means that the data set granularity is based on sales representatives that have been given targets per product. And these targets are also supposed to be realized on a monthly basis. So that is to say that, if you check our data set, which I'm just going to try to go and look for that data right now. So if I go to my desktop, I think I have it right here, farm targets. So the first thing you will be doing when you're working with target data set in Power BI is you want to find out what is the granularity of this my target data. Okay. So in this case, you are going to see that the granularity of the target is per product, per sales representatives, and they are supposed to realize it on a monthly basis, right? So product, sales rep, monthly. So the key person here really are the sales representatives, but they have target per product. So they'll be measuring their performances based on their product achievement or based on their periodic achievement for the targets, right? Now, in as much as this is what our data set look like, I'm going to be coming back to discuss how we are going to model this exact data in Power BI in relation to the actual sales data itself, right? So the first thing is know the granularity of your target data. Now, after you know the granularity of your target data, basically, we all know that target is meant for measuring performances, and the performance we are going to be measuring target against will usually be the actual performance. So you have targets, how exactly did you perform in reality? So after you get the granularity of your target data sets, you want to get the granularity of your actual data set as well. So let me go to pull up the actual data sets. Okay. So typically, everything you have in the targets is expected to be in the actual as well, because the target is for somebody, and that person also has some kind of actual performances again that we are measuring. So everything in the target is meant to be in actual. Okay. So the actual data set looks like this. And the moment you see this data, you already know that the granularity is a little bit different. Okay. So the granularity for target is different from the granularity for actual. How are they different? Again, when we check our targets, we see that target is per sales rep, per product, and per month. But when you check the actual, you are going to see that actual basically has other things. So you are going to see that, the actual data has actually come with customers, it has come with locations, and it has also come with channels and sub-channels, which basically mean that these two things are not on the same granularity level. Now, when your actual data and your target data are not on the same level, it simply means that in your Power BI data model, you are going to keep both tables separate, right? Obviously, they are both fact tables. Now, it simply means that because my actual and my target are not on the same level, then I'm going to have in my data model two fact tables in this regard. I'm going to have my actual fact table, and I'm going to have my target fact table, okay? So which takes out any ideas that you may have for creating a relationship between these two. To say that again, there is no point creating a relationship between the actual data and the target data because they are not at the same granularity level, right? Now, having said that, I'm going to come back to see how we model this really in Power BI. But before I talk about that, like I said, I try to expand on the topic just as last minute changes. I think I have some data sets here that I prepared in the last minute for us to see what other ways could target data look like? Okay, so I have this target sample here. All right, so on a target sample, okay, there are certain times that you are going to see that your targets are going to be on the same level as your actual. So for example, in these actual data sets, we have month, year, we have sales reps, and we have products. And when you check the targets, you are going to see that the target also has month and year, which is basically month, year, sales rep, and product, just like you have on the actual. So when you have this kind of scenario, it is possible for you to merge the two tables into one table, right? So you can merge your actual and your target only when they are of the same granularity level, all right? Okay, so let's see how we can do something like that. So I'm just going to close this one for a second, and I will go to my Power BI. I think I have one opened already. Okay. All right. So get data, Excel workbook, and then that should be on my desktop. Should have target samples. So in this case, they are both of the same granularity. I'm going to combine them into a single fact table. And the only reason I'm doing that is because, you know, the levels are the same. So I want to pick actual and the monthly targets. I'm going to transform data. All right. Okay. So when I go to check my actual, obviously we've seen that from the Excel, I have a column for month, year, and then my sales reps on my products. But if I go to check my monthly targets, you know, I don't have a column for month, year. What I have simply is month and year as separate columns. So the first thing I'm going to try to do in this instance is just to do a little bit of transformation, right? Now in real life, you could have them together already, which means you don't have to do any kind of transformation. But for this one, I'll just do combine my month and my year columns. So just select both of them, holding control, I'm going to right click and merge columns. All right, so the column name, I'm going to call it month, year. I'm going to click OK. Then I have to convert this column into a date data type, just like we have on the actual, right? So this data type. I'm going to convert this to dates. Now, one thing you also have to note here is that whenever you want to do like a sales versus budget or sales versus targets kind of analysis and visualization in Power BI, if you have those targets defined at a monthly level, right, and you know that you are going to need to do some kind of time intelligence analysis, you know, you are going to need to do things like year to date, you are going to need to compare like versus same period last year. So you will have to convert, or you will need to have a date column for those your targets. Even if the targets are defined as monthly, even if they are defined as yearly, you have to find a way to convert those months, or you have to find a way to convert those years into date data types. Now, when you convert them into date data types, they are all going to be showing as first of each of those months, right? Or in the case where your granularity are basically just at the year level, they are going to show as the 1st of January of every year, right? But it's important for you to, you know, define a column that is of dates data type there, okay? So now I have my month here as well. So what you could do for this one is to combine the actual and the monthly targets. Simple, just go to home, go to merge queries, and I'm going to use merge queries as new for this instance. So I want to merge, let's start with the actual, and I want to merge that to the target. Okay, and you have to make sure that you select the columns in the same order. So I'm going to try, let's see how this is going to go. If I select month, sales rep, product ID. Can I also select month, sales rep, and product ID here? Okay, so let's assume that works fine. I'm going to click OK. Then I will have a new column on the extreme right-hand side, which has my monthly targets. Expand that, and I can use that to bring in this, right? Now, this is where you may actually want to use the column name as prefix, just so that you can have a difference between the quantity on the actual table and the quantity in the targets table. So I click OK here. Okay, so this basically gives me, the targets, right? So this scenario that we have looked at is a scenario that has the actual and the monthly targets on the same granularity level. When you have this scenario, it is okay for you to merge the two tables into a single table that has both the actual numbers and the target numbers. But when you don't have that, then you have to take a different approach. Now I'm going to look at another example that is a little bit more complex. And it's also a common scenario that you may also find when you are working with target data sets. So still on the target samples, so there is a different target data set here that is annual targets. So in reality, sometimes you're going to have targets that are defined at a higher granularity level, but the business probably wants to cascade that target downwards. So for example, these targets are based on the full year. So this sales representative, for example, is supposed to sell 2016 quantities of these products, okay, for the year. And this person is also supposed to sell 324 quantities of this product for this year as well. So now there's a possibility that they will give you these targets files as annual targets, but they would like you to split it or to cascade it downwards to monthly, okay? So there can be several ways for you to work with that. And like I said, just as a last minute approach, I decided to include this one here. So I'll be showing you, how we can manage something like this in Power Query, whereby in our data preparation in Power Query, we are going to find a way to split each of these targets into 12, right? So one for each month, so that we are going to divide 2016 by 12, and we can have a value for each month of the target, okay? So that's what I'm going to show next. And after that, we'll go straight into our own main data set and how we model it completely. All right. So let me go bring in this new one. So recent sources, target samples. I'll be connecting to the annual targets. Click OK. So the methodology to use here, like I said, is, these targets has been set at an annual level, but we want to cascade this downwards to monthly, which means every single row of target that we have here, we are going to have to replicate it to become 12 rows. Now, after we replicate to 12 rows, we can now divide by 12, right? So that at the end of the day, by the time you add back the 12, you still come back to 2016, but we just want to find a way to split this annual into monthly, all right? So the trick to use here is, first, I'm going to highlight all my data columns with Control A on my keyboard. Now you need to note that before you use Control A in Power Query to highlight all columns, you must make sure that you have selected a column. Now, when I say making sure you have selected a column, this is what I mean. If I go to this query, for example, it does seem like the month year column is selected because it is highlighted, but it is not selected. So if I press Control A now, nothing is going to happen, right? So I need to physically click on a column and then press Control A before that is going to work. Right? So I'm going back to the annual target, and I want to highlight all the columns. So select one column and press Control A to highlight all the columns. Now, after highlighting, I will be going to my transform tab, and then I'm going to use the group by feature. So the reason I'm grouping by is because I want to try to put every single row of this data into a table of their own. Now, the idea is if I'm able to put every single row into a table of their own, I'll be able to replicate the table into 12 places, right? That's the idea. So I'm going to click on group by, and then for my new column name, I will just use any name I like. I think I'm going to call this one grouped. And for the operation, I don't really want to group by any operation, so to say. I just want to return all my rows, right? So when I return all the rows and I click OK, it's going to give me a new grouped column that basically has every single row inside a table of its own. So you can see that on row 1, under my grouped column, I have a table. Now, if I click in the cell for that my groups table, please note that I'm not clicking on the table name. I'm just clicking in the empty cell right there. So if I click on this cell like this, you are going to see all the values on that row. They are there, okay? And the idea, like I said, is to replicate these rows into 12 places. So what I'm going to do this replication is I will go to my Add Column tab, and I'm going to select Custom Column. So this custom column, I don't know what I'm going to call it. What are we going to call it? I'm going to call it replication, just any name. And I'm always very terrible with naming things. So replication, and my custom formula is going to be, can I find something? Can I find an M function that can repeat things? So let's say table repeats. Okay, so I have a function that says table.repeat. I'm going to select that function, open bracket. Okay, so what are the arguments for this function? First, I need to provide a table. Good enough. I have this, my new column that has table values, and the column name is called grouped. So I'm going to come over here, double click on the grouped. So I want to repeat each of those rows. After all, the rows actually are individual tables. So I'll be repeating those groups. I'll put a comma. How many times did we say we want to repeat them? 12 times. Okay, close brackets and click OK. Now I have the replication column. And just like I did the other time, if I go into the cell, again, not on the name, just go into the cell and click on the empty space in the cell, you are going to see that each of the rows that were singular rows before are now 12 each. Okay, if I scroll down and do a count, I'm going to be having 12, right? Now, the next step I'm going to take from here is inside each of these, I will be trying, or I'm going to try to add a column right here. I'll try to add a column here, over here like this. Now, this new column I want to add, I need it to have numbers 1, 2, 3, all the way to 12. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to use each row to represent a month. So 1, I'll be using to represent January 2022. 2 is going to represent February 2022. So I want to add, one extra column there. Again, I will leverage the same approach. So I'm going to go to Add Column. I'm going to select Custom Column. And this time, I'm going to call this column month NO for month number. And the function I will try to use here is an index column. So if I do something like add index, I should see something table.add index column. I'm going to select that and I'm going to open bracket. Again, this one wants a table as the first argument, and the table I want to provide here is the replication table. So I will select that replication table. I'm going to put a comma. The new column name, okay, I think I should rather call this one month NO. This is actually the one I need to call month NO. Then I'm going to put another comma for the next argument. The initial value should be 1. I'll put another comma. The incremental value should be 1. So I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 12. And then finally, the column type, I'm going to use int 64.type. I want the column to be an integer that's going to give me like a whole number, right? So close brackets, click OK. I scroll right, I have that my new column here, and let's check by clicking on the empty cell one more time. So by clicking the empty cell, I'm going to see that in that table on that row, I have the numbers replicated 12 times, and I have a new column that I've added that has a month number from 1 to 12, right? Now, since I can have all those details that I need inside this one column, what I can do is to remove all the other columns. So I'm going to right click on this column and I'm going to say remove all other columns. Then I can expand on this column and pick all the columns that are in there. I'll click OK. And then I have, what I want. It used to be just singular rows. Now I've replicated each row 12 times. The next thing is going to be for me to actually divide the quantities by 12, right? So the full budget for our first guy is supposed to be 2016 for the full year, but now we want to break it down into 12. So each row is supposed to be something, around 2016 divided by 12, right? So, but first I'm going to have to select all my columns with Control A again, go to Transform tab, and I want to use Detect Data Type. Okay, that's the lazy way to do things. So Detect Data Type, all my columns have the right data types when I try to confirm. And then finally, I just want to go to the quantities column. I want to go to standard, and I want to divide by 12. I'm going to click OK. Right, so our guy is supposed to have or to meet a target of 168 quantities per month before he or she will be able to make 2016 by the end of the year, all right? So this scenario 2 is basically a scenario where you have your target data showing at a higher level of granularity. So for example, the target is showing at an annual level, but we would like to cascade it downwards to monthly. That means that singular row of targets per person needs to be replicated 12 times, right? Now, finally, into our own case study. All right, so I think I have that one open before. Right, so this is the target for our case study, and you are going to see that we have our column for product ID, our column for sales rep, our column for month. However, the real target numbers have been spread across several years. Now, the rule when you are working with data is very simple. Every single variable you can point to in your data set are supposed to have their own column. So for example, if I ask you, what can you see in this data set? You are going to tell me that you can see product ID, you can see sales rep ID, you can see month. You are going to also tell me that you can see different years. And the fact that you can see different years simply means that you need to have a single column for years. So what you are seeing currently is not going to cut it. We have to have a column for years, right? Okay. So I'm going to close, I'm going to delete all the other queries I have. These are by the way. So I can bring in real case study data. Okay. So new source, Excel workbook. I think I have some versions in my downloads. I'll be working with those versions. Okay. Right. So going into downloads, I want to bring in the targets. Okay, click OK. Then I'm going to bring in the actuals. So again, new source, Excel workbook. data sets. So for the actual data set, we already have a split of both the sales and the required dimensions for this data. So I have dimensions for channels, employees, location, products, sub-channel. And then we have two levels of sales, which I'm going to talk about when I start to do my transformations. I'm going to click OK. So because all the sales data sets are going to be analyzed together in one single batch, then there is no point in keeping the 2022 sales data separate from the 2023 to 2025 sales data. So for those two data sets, the first thing we're going to do is to append those data sets, right? So before I do my append, I would like to create two groups in my Power Query. So I can do a right click just to keep my work neat and tidy. I'm going to create a new group here. This new group, I'm going to call it ETL. And then I'll create another group. Since I have the ETL group, I'm going to right click, create another new group that I will call model queries. So the idea here is that my ETL is going to have files that I'm not going to be loading into my Power BI. I don't want to load them because I just want to use them to, carry out my transformations, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to append my 2022 and 2023 to 2025 data set. So I'll go to home. I'm going to use append queries, and I just want to use append queries as new. And I want to append sales 2022 to 2023 to 2025. And I will click OK. All right, so this is my appended sales. Like I said, the individual files that are making up these sales, I will be taking those ones out, right? Because I'm only using them to build, right? I have my final version here. So first thing, highlight or right click on the 2022 and disable load or untick enable load. Then go to the 2023 and untick enable load, right? Then I can hold Control to select both of them. Then, why is that not working? Okay, hold Control to select both of them. Then I'm just going to simply drag this and put it inside the ETL box. Right? So the appended one, basically, I can rename this and call it actual sales. Now, to the targets. Like I said, every single data variable that you can see, that you can describe from your data set is supposed to have their own columns. So we've got product ID, we've got sales rep, we've got month, and we have different years, but those years, they have to go into their own columns. We also have the target quantities that need to go into their own columns as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is ensure that the first row of my data is actually my header row. So I should go to Transform tab, and I'm going to use the first row as headers. Okay, now I'm going to select the first three columns, product ID, hold Shift and select month, so I can highlight all those three at the same time. Then I'm going to right click on any of those headers and select on pivot other columns. So on pivot other columns, and I have my column for, the years, and I have my column for the quantities. So the only thing I'm going to do here is if I try to expand my formula bar here, I just want to change this value from showing as value to displaying as target quantity, or QTY for short. All right. Now, the next thing, like I've earlier said, when you are working with target data sets, you want to make sure that if you have periods in your data, those periods, you want to make sure they are being displayed as dates data types. And the objective for doing that is to ensure that, your analysis, your period-to-period analysis, your time intelligence analysis can be easy for you to carry out. So I'm going to select my month column, hold Control and select the year column, do a right click and merge columns. Right, so the new column name again, I'm going to call it month, year. So this is my month, year, and I'm going to click OK. Right, and the next thing is for me to make this my month, year column to be a date data type. Right, so now that seems to be good. Right, now if you have these transformations done, then it's easier for you to load your data into Power BI and create your data model. However, there's just one more thing that you have to note. Okay, so in Power BI generally, you know, we all know that the best model, the best type of data model you can implement in your Power BI is a star schema model. You want to implement a star schema model. Okay, so and in a star schema model, what you are going to be having is a model whereby when you have several tables that are related to one another. So let's say I have you know, let's just use an example of 4 tables here. So I have these 4 tables, and I'm going to assume that this table is a fact table, this table is a dimension table. Basically, all the other tables are dimension tables, and the kind of relationship you have in this model might be something that looks like this. From this dimension to this dimension, I'm going to call this relationship A. And then from this dimension to this fact, rather, I'm going to call this relationship B. And then this other one as well, from this dimension to this, I'm going to call this relationship C. Okay. Now, in a star schema model, when you look at the relationships that you have in the model, in this case, there are 3 relationships, right? So if we look at the 3 relationships we have in this model, they are A, B, and C. Now, if I want to define what these relationships are connected to, you are going to see that relationship A is a relationship that has a dimension to facts table. Relationship B also has a dimension to facts table. Relationship C also has a dimension to facts table as well, right? So basically, in this my data model, I have a dimension to facts table relationship all through, and this is what basically gives me a star schema. Okay, now imagine if I have a 4th table here. Let's say I have a 4th table somewhere here, and this 4th table happens to be related to this other dimension, right? So let's say this 4th table is also a dimension right here, and this is going to be my relationship D. Okay, if I have this relationship D and I try to define this relationship D, you are going to see that relationship D goes from one dimension to another dimension. So if you are creating a star schema model, you want to create something that has every kind of relationship in the model going from dimension to fact, dimension to fact, dimension to fact, not dimension to dimension, right? However, if you look at our data sets that we are working with, we have dim channel and we also have dim sub channel. Okay, and what it means is if you have dim sub channel, for example, which is a dimension, you expect it to be able to connect or relate with the fact table. And since our major fact table here is the actual sales, so you want to think that, okay, this my dim sub channel, how do I connect it to my facts table? So if I go to my actual sales, you will see that I should have a sub channel ID somewhere. Okay, so you see I have a sub channel ID somewhere that I can connect this sub channel to. However, if you go to check the dim channel, I just checked dim sub channel. So if you check the dim channel, what you are going to see is that it has a channel ID. The question is, can this dim channel also be related to the facts table? Which means I'm expecting to have a channel ID on my fact table as well. So if I go to my fact table, the actual sales, and I look through, you will see that I don't have a channel ID, right? So which typically means that when you want to implement this kind of model, ordinarily, what you want to do is to relate dim channel and dim sub-channel together. But when you do that, then your star schema is not going to be starring anymore. Okay, it will no longer star. So which is why whenever you have a situation where you are potentially going to have a dimension table connecting to another dimension table, and you want to implement a star schema because that is the best you can have in Power BI, what you have to do or what you should do is to merge those two dimensions into a single dimension, right? So what I'm going to do is to merge my dim channel to my dim sub-channel. So again, I will go to my home tab. I'm going to go to merge queries, Sorry, I think I want to use merge queries as new. I'll go to merge queries as new. So I want to merge what and what. I want to merge the sub-channel to the channel, and the key to merging is going to be based on the channel IDs. Click OK, expand is, and I just want to bring only the channel there, right? So my dim sub-channel now basically has, the sub-channel ID, the channel ID, the channel, sub-channel rather, and the channel itself. So for sub-channels, we have government, private, institution, and retail. And then for channel, we have hospitals and pharmacies. So government hospital, private hospital, institution pharmacy, retail pharmacy. Okay, now in this case, the channel ID will no longer be required, so I can simply remove that one. So now I just have sub-channel ID, sub-channel, and channel. Okay, and this I can call, maybe I'm just going to call it channels. Then again, the makeup tables for these channels tables are the dim channel. So I'm going to right-click and untick enable load. I'm also going to right-click on dim sub-channel, untick enable load. Now I can select both queries with control. And I'm going to drag and take it to ETL. Okay. Now that this is complete, we can simply close and apply. We're just waiting for this to load. Right. Okay, so queries loaded. Now we're going to have a view of what your data model should look like. Okay, so the ideal model for that exercise, if I go to my model view, and what I'll do first is to make sure I can see everything in a single view by clicking on this fits to page. And then I want to have, my fact tables, I want to have them somewhere, below the dimension tables. So that's where it's easy for me to understand how my model flows. So the actual sales is one of my fact tables. The other fact table I have should be my targets. I want to have those somewhere here like this. And I want to have my dimensions just above them. Okay, so it's easier for me to track the flow of my model. All right, so obviously something is wrong from here because my dim employees is not looking right. All I see is column 1, column 2, column 3. That means the headers were not promoted. So I'm going to go to my data, right-click on dim employees, edit query. And I want to use first row as headers. Okay, then close and apply. All right, so once this is done, you want to confirm that the relationships you have created are good, they are working fine. So first, since my target is based on employees and products, I need to have relationships from my target table to the deemed products, which is there. I also need to have that relationship from my target table to my employees table, right? And that's going to be based on the sales rep ID column. So drag my sales rep ID column and connect to this ID here. I'm going to have to repeat the same thing for my actual. So for the actual, I'm going to drag my sales rep ID and I'm going to connect that to the ID here. So in case you are wondering why we have the other relationships automatically connected and these employees does not automatically connect, right? So that happens because, you know, the columns don't have the same names. So on the deemed employees, the employee ID name is called ID. But on the targets, the employee ID is called sales rep ID. The same thing on the actuals, the employee ID is called sales rep ID, right? So that simply just means that, you know, when Power BI wants to detect automatic relationships, it simply makes use of column names. So even if the column names, you know, are the same, but they have different data types or different types of data values, you should still expect the relationship to be automatically created for you. So that's why you need to always confirm your relationships after you load into your data model, okay? Now, if you have your model done this way, then it's going to be easy for you to start building your reports, and your reports are that are going to be based on products. You want to confirm, you know, the product target versus the actual sales for the product. It's easy for you to do that because your deemed product has a relationship to the target table. It also has a relationship to the actual table. So if you pick a product, for example, so let's see. So if I do, let's say I use a clustered column chart like this. I use a cluster column chart and I try to put in on the axis maybe a product name. So if I go to deemed products and I just use a product, maybe product class rather, I can easily check on the values. I should be able to check the actual sales quantity for each product class. And I should also be able to check the target quantities side by side, okay? This only works because my product class is coming from my deemed product, and this deemed product is related to actual sales. So it can give me the actual sales per product. This deemed product is also related to targets. So it can give me the targets for each product, okay? Now, the only last thing that you will have to implement in this, your model, especially when you want to do periodic analysis, is for you to use a date or a calendar table. So I'll just quickly go to my modeling and I'm going to create a new table that will have just a single column, you know, or maybe just very quickly create columns for, so let's say this is calendar, spelling, and I want to do, my table is going to use calendar auto, close brackets. And the first column, I'm going to try to use month, number, and the expression that will give me month number is going to be the month function. And the month function wants me to provide a date. So I'm just going to type dates, D-A-T-E. Now, when you are using add column to create your calendar table like this, you know, the moment you use the calendar auto function, you have to know that you already have a hidden dates column somewhere. Now, that date column that you have hidden is what you need to use in the month function. So if I type in dates here, you don't see it quickly, use the arrow up key on your computer, right? So go to the arrow up key on your keyboard, press that. The first date that comes up in square bracket, that's your date column that is hidden. Select that, close brackets, put a comma. Then I want to create a month name, or let's just call it month. And the function to give me month is going to be the name of the month, rather, is going to be format. My value again is the date. I'm going to use my arrow up and select that guy. And the format is going to be MMM. Close the quotes, close the brackets, put a comma, and then I'm going to create year. And I'm going to use the year function to show the date, arrow up, select that, close brackets, enter. So now I have a calendar table. And remember, the moment you have your calendar table, first thing you should do is what? Go to click on mark as dates table, and select your dates column, click OK. And then obviously I can go into my data model. I have my calendar table right there as a dimension. And this calendar table is going to be connected to my actual through the dates column. So dates here goes to month year on the actual table. And the same dates goes to month year on the targets table. Now with this model, you can simply do your actual versus target analysis for any of the target granularities that we have. Again, remember what our target granularities one more time, or let's say finally, products, sales reps, and my dates. So now we have seen how to analyze or how to display our products targets versus the actual. You can also do the same thing to visualize the target of each sales rep or whatever column you have in the sales rep dimension versus the actual. And because we have now created a dates table, it is also possible for us to see that by dates as well. So you can put this up and you can check on the y-axis, for example. Let's say we're going to use the month. Of course, I don't want to use the month because or I shouldn't use a month, but I'll just show you here because that's one other common mistakes that people are going to make when they create their calendar tables, right? So by month, you may want to check your actual quantities versus your target quantities. All right. So again, you are going to see here that, before you finalize on your date or your calendar table, you must sort your month columns by the month number. So that's why you can see that August is the first column to show here, followed by, this is basically sorting in a different kind of order. So I need to go to check, I could do this from anywhere, but I prefer to do it from my data view. So let me see what I'm looking at. I'm going to select my calendar table. And what I want to say is, hey, month column, every time I use you in a report, I need you to always be sorted by the month number. That way, January will always show up first. December will always show up last. June will always show up in the middle, right? So I go back to my reports. All I need to do is this visual. I can use the ellipses, dots, and ask it to sort by month. First time you do that, it's going to go descending. So you need to go back, go to sort, and ask it to sort ascending. Okay, and basically that's a wrap. So what I'll be doing is to create a link to put in all the data set that I have used. In fact, I don't think I'll be putting that in a link. I'll simply just put it on the internship course, right? So if you want to take the internship, you can easily go to sign up and take the Power BI developer internship. I believe it's going to help you to, stretch your skills and to also make sure you have something as a portfolio project. You can basically just copy out those requirements on the internship and use it as a case for your project, right? So if you have any questions, you can basically type them out and I will see how many of them I can answer. So any questions? Questions. So if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer your questions in the next 2-3 minutes. All right. Okay, so in the absence of questions, it's a wrap, and I hope to see you some other time. Do enjoy the rest of your day.